Before we get started, I just wanted to say this video mentions some things such as abuse and self-harm that some viewers may not want to watch. I do not blame you if that's the case, however, I do not go in depth about these subjects or show them on screen. They are referenced and that's about it. If that's okay with you, press on. If not, then I completely understand and I'll see you next time. One thing Persona 5 has been made fun of since its launch is that it has an abundance of lovely ladies to romance, but everyone and their mom has the hots for one student body president, Miss Makoto Niijima. And the reason this is the case has multiple answers, most notably the meme that you are telling the story of how you wooed and then fucked the sister of the person you're telling the story to for upwards of 100 hours. However, there is more to her than just this simple joke. The other girls are lovely to be sure, and even some men, Mishima, but if we're looking at just the ladies and then asking what makes them less lovable, or rather less good than when compared to Miss Perfect, we come up with a strange answer. A contentious statement, I know, but I want to walk you through it for a bit. It all comes down to one thing. Makoto has the least damage. Before we get into this, let me ask you something. In each arc of the game, what do you remember from each character in that said arc? On Ryuji, it's the abuse of Kamoshida. Ryuji more physical, On more sexual and psychological. Yusuke? His entire life was uprooted and his father figure was revealed to have been using him and his other students for personal and financial gain. Futaba is in a depression because her mother committed not alive in front of her and is the equivalent of a toddler socially. Haru is being sold off into marriage, then her father dies and is now the majority shareholder of a billion-dollar company. And Akechi is trying to kill you over his daddy issues. So you know, fun. Makoto, on the other hand, is dealing with some rando who is threatening her fellow students and now friends. Her trauma of losing her father is in the past, not to say that it doesn't affect her, but it happened years ago to the point she was maybe in high elementary school when it happened. Yeah, her sister is kind of being a bitch and calls her a leech on her life. Again, not to downplay this, but it's something a talk with Sai can't fix. Not to mention that Sai has a palace and we do change her heart so she becomes a better person. It's no different than the other 6 people we deal with in the palace in the game. The only difference now is that this is a more immediate, personable threat to someone else, and it's not even a physical one, it's a psychological one. Which, again, not to downplay that, but I'm trying to elaborate on why this works differently than Kamoshida or even Futaba. Her damage is adults pressuring her to be perfect, which no 17-year-old should go through. She's just a kid who wants to be as normal as possible, but can't due to her father and sister's legacy leaving huge expectations for her that she can meet, but being perfect all the time is exhausting for anyone, not just a kid. I'm not gonna lie though, in the first 2 arcs of the game, I hate her so much. The big problem with that is that Makoto has these long stretches of talking to the principal over things we either already know or don't give a fuck about. The scenes are too long and too boring with no player impact that it's hard to get into them. And even when she does start approaching us about Kaneshiro, she's so frustrating and the group distrusts her and is high-key pissy at her for sticking her nose into their business. You'd think I'd hate her the whole game or have a bitter taste in my mouth. And for the most part, you'd be right. But then this happens.
Have you decided to tread the path of strife? Yes. Come to me! Very well. Let us proceed with our contract at once. I am thou. Thou art I. You have finally found your own justice. Please, never lose sight of it again. This memorable day marks your graduation from your false self.
What the hell?
Makoto's awakening is the single best moment in the game. It can't be beat. She explodes and screams. Her rage and freedom is so infectious that I can't help but cheer every time I see it. The show even did this effectively. The only awakening that comes even close to beating it, and might even surpass it on a good day for me, is Sophie from Strikers. And that's simply because of how she just screams the name Pandora. It's amazing. Ren's is great, the way it's animated is really cool, Ryuji's was good, and the ending line was fucking awesome. Ann's is a good take back my power moment, even though I hate her outfit. That's a different rant for a different day, I promise. Yosuke's just looks boring. He pulls up the mask, no pain, no nothing, just come Goemon, and then boom, there he is. Futaba is a boss fight, so it loses a little power for me. Haru is a cool concept, but it's kinda oddly executed if you think about it for more than a minute, and Morgana and Akechi's are reveals rather than awakenings. Even Loki is not so much an awakening as a reveal of a second persona. The only other one that I can say comes close in the base games is Kasumi in Royal. Both are rather flashy and have a moment that resonates with the player more because we spend time with her beforehand, not after. I will say the Sailor Moon transformation is really fucking dumb, but I get it for plot purposes. That's another thing about Awakenings that's unique to Makoto. She is the only one to have a complete heel turn in her character that we the player get to feel. Think about it. The other characters change, but it's such a minute change that it comes off as a bit flat. Ann was always kinda hot-headed and annoyed when we met her. Ryuji is the same as ever, just with a shocking new friend. Yosuke kinda blends in the background after a while. Futaba does change drastically, but that's story-based progression that snaps into place once we force her to be better, and Haru stays as soft-spoken as ever, just with more confidence. That's the thing with confidants in this game. While yes, you do help them become more self-sufficient and work through stuff, those bits of character growth can't really be shown in the story proper because they're optional. Like Ryuji's whole thing with the former track team is interesting, but no one brings it up at all. No one talks about it. We just act like the new teacher taking the role the ex-abuser just left, who is also friends with said abuser and is now repeating said abusive behavior, is normal since it's an optional side quest, and that's not okay. Ann and her modeling is just kinda out of left field half the time, since half the ranks are about Shiho, but the other half are about this random bitch named Mika, who is in fact a bitch. All Team Confidants are like this. The only one I can see being the way it is because of the story is Yusuke, and that's because his is an internal conflict that is only really dealt with by us and the group, so we don't need to discuss it because we already know about it. Well, that, and then he goes to a completely different school, so an internal conflict is A, cheaper to implement in the game, and B, more fitting for his character. Makoto is the only Shujin Academy teammate that has a growth that is worth a damn, since it shows up in the story a lot more often than the rest. Makoto's whole arc is about becoming more personable with her fellow students and being able to function in normal society with more grace than a brick at a tumble dryer. And if you're thinking this sounds an awful lot like Futaba, you'd be right. However, where Futaba is all about learning how to be a person from the ground up, Makoto is learning how to be a teenage girl. She's learning that while she can fight off a group of men, she's not that great with being manipulated. Which, can I say I love that since it ties into her as a Phantom Thief, given that her weakness is fucking psychokinesis, and that her second awakening ability is Dodge Psi. I just love that attention to detail. Speaking of her thief persona, let's dive into that a little bit more. So again, her awakening is the best in the game. I love it. The emotion, the mood shift, the way she just wants to smack a bitch, it's all amazing. Her persona, Johanna, being a bike, is one of the most unique things in the game. As you can ride her, it sucks that a knot is a transformer that spins when you summon her, but something. She at least fits the theme better than Satan Taisei, or how the fuck you pronounce that. It looks a hell of a lot better than Hecate. I like the second awakening stuff a lot, but if I'm being honest, third semester had a lot better looking personas, even though Yusuke's and Haru's literally looked like DLC skins, but again, they're definitely great, not worse. Makoto just has this air about her that's so fun when juxtaposed to her day-to-day life. Like I said before, no one else really changes that much in the metaverse. They're all still the same base level of character, just with a new outfit. Makoto goes from Little Miss Perfect to a fucking post-apocalyptic biker chick, and it's awesome. That's something else to be commended on. Her thief outfit is tasteful, all things considered. She's covered, has a nice color scheme to match the aesthetic, and her mask is really simple, but stands out as one of the more unique masks in the game. I'd argue ones like Skull are more fun, but I don't know, something about the fact this looks like two pieces of metal welded together fits in a strangely bizarre way. I've said it before, but I cannot get over her personality shift. It's just so good to me. Like, her screaming fists of justice and her Showtime and all-out attack are such good flavor text that it's become a meme. And a good one, not like My Name is Beauty Thief, which got old really fast. Makoto just has no downsides to her. She gets flustered easily, which makes doing things with her kind of fun in a way that's unique to other girls in the game. Speaking of that, I feel like I need to explain why she's not only the best written character, but also best girl. I touched on this earlier in a roundabout way with the teammates, but Makoto is just the only girl I feel comfortable romancing. Well, I did romance Kasumi, but that was just to see what would happen. You can't tell me this shit's not funny. Every other girl just has some olfactory stop for one reason or another. I'm the weird guy in the room who likes to name the protagonist of whatever RPG I'm playing as their canonical name, since the dissonance of seeing my name or another person/character's name throws me out of the experience a lot. Joker, aka Akira Kurosu or Ren Amamiya, is a 16-year-old high school student, and I try to act accordingly to that and his personality. So right off the bat, Oya, Takemi, and Chihaya are off the table. I know Chihaya is only like 20, but that's still way over the legal limit of consent, so just no. She could be a friend and all, but if people can get on Dan from Game Grumps' case for knowing a girl for 2 months before she was 18 and then having sex with her years later, I think this qualifies as gross. Kawakami is just several buckets of crazy, and I do not care who you are, it's wrong. Not only is she at least 10 years older than him, not only is she extorting you for money to pay back people that she could easily go to the cops to, not only is she pulling double duty in the submissive maid role, but also the sexy teacher angle, which both are really fucked up no matter how you look at it, she is also holding your future in her hands. Yeah, remember that at the start of the game when she meets you and she tells you straight up if you fuck up too much, she'll report you and have you expelled? And since she's the last line of defense on that matter, it's impossible to tell if she's using that for leverage or if she's forgotten about it. It's never brought up in the deal directly, but it's one of those things you tend not to forget if you ask me. Oh, and she never pays you back for requesting her at least 7 or 8 times, leading to about $40,000. At least Chihaya gave you that courtesy of giving back the $1,000 you spent on the fucking rock. Alright, now that the adults are taken care of, let's look at the teammates really quick. On is a sexual assault victim and is really close to someone who tried to commit not alive. And this was at the middle of the school year, which the game ends on Christmas, so yeah, she's out. Haru's father dies less than a month after you meet her, so she's out by sheer amount of trauma and processing she'd need to go through. Futaba is your surrogate little sister, so gross. Kasumi I'm up in the air about because her trauma is also in the past, but is still ongoing in her mind, and we do help her work through it directly rather than a roundabout way like everyone else. These girls don't need romance. They need a security blanket and a cup of coffee while you listen to their problems in a platonic way, you horny pervs. So by default, we're left with 2 options for the women we're supposed to romance in this game, Makoto and Hifume, which I bet half of you forgot was a character in this game until I brought her up. I know I sure did. Hifume, while not as omnipresent as the rest of the girls, and to be honest not even as interesting, is at least level-headed, smart, sure of herself, and confident. Again, we help her through the whole conflict of her mother, allowing us to have a more visceral bond with her than most other characters. She's not top tier or anything, but she's Joker's age, isn't a relative in any way, and has a small enough conflict that it's not weird to start dating her once it's resolved. The only thing she lacks is something Makoto has in spades: personality. When I think of Persona 5, I think of Makoto. I think of her passion, her drive, her willingness to protect those she cares about, even if she's only known them for 5 seconds. This comes into play more so in her sister's palace, which complements beautifully with the Kaneshiro palace, since they're both based on money and revolve around the Niijima sisters in one way or another. Sai is honestly one of the characters the game sets up the best because of her tie to Makoto and her narrative purpose. This is why the penultimate palace hits people so hard. It's because we care about Makoto, and by proxy the flashback nature of the game, we've grown to care about Sai. Also, for those of you who wanted romance Sai, why? Just why? I mean, I get it, bossy prosecutor lady yelling at you about eating pizza with your boyfriend, but seriously, come on. In the game proper, we've known her for maybe a couple of minutes to an hour, and by the end it's been maybe a month tops. Like, what the actual fuck? Persona 5 is a massively long game that I have played multiple times. However, every time I have, I'm always drawn to Miss Perfect herself, Makoto Niijima, for one reason or another. I hope I've explained those reasons thoroughly enough and maybe started World War V with the waifu wars again. I don't know. But you know what really pisses me off about this game? The fact that Joker is a silent protagonist who we have complete autonomy over, and yet we can't date any of these lovely idiots. And Royal didn't even fix this problem. Just write a bisexual lead, you cowards. My name is Chris, and it's okay, Mishima. I'll protect you and make you strong.